VPN.
Huh.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Melbourne AWS user group number 136. It's April already. I'm not even sure how we got to the end of April, but thank you everybody who turned out in person tonight, even though it's a start of a long weekend tomorrow with the Thursday public holiday. I really appreciate you making the time to do so, and to anybody, where's my camera, anybody watching online, welcome. Let's kick this off. So in the spirit of reconciliation, the Melbourne AWS user group would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which we're meeting tonight, or which we're broadcasting from. And we'd like to pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. A reminder that we do run these events under our code of conduct. We want this to be as welcoming and inclusive place as it possibly can be. So if anything doesn't feel welcoming or inclusive, please come and let myself or Jason, who's got his hand up down the back, know. If you prefer, there is a button here that I can use to turn off the thing. This one. If you prefer, the full code of conduct is available on the website, and there is a form there where you can file feedback anonymously as well, if that makes you feel more comfortable. Some places you can find us, or a little bit about us if you're new here. You can find us on the internet, obviously. Everybody has a website. It's not 2002. We are also on Instagram. On Instagram, what's that other first icon? LinkedIn. Doesn't say L, does it? We're also on LinkedIn. We're on Mastodon. We're not on the Bird site anymore. And as I mentioned before, we do have a YouTube channel. All of our videos for all time are available there if there's anything that you want to rewatch or want to learn more about. We have an awesome night ahead of us tonight. These are the introductions that I'm running through now. Then Jason will take through the what's new, or the news, and what's going on around the AWS ecosystem in the last month or so. We should probably get rid of the after reInvent bit, because that was a while ago. After reInvent, yeah. Then we've got two great talks tonight. So Olga is going to take us through Inbox to Insights, the power of serverless data pipelines. Something that I'm really keen. There's not a lot of presentations around data pipelines out there, so this should be really good. And then Jason's going to wrap up the Sydney Summit, which was week before? Last week. Then at the very end, we have a very quick marketplace segment if anybody is hiring, and then we'll try and wrap up and be out of here by about 8 o'clock or so. Everybody can get home. There are a couple of places. We are running this as a hybrid event, online and in person. If you are watching online, you can ask any questions you have of our presenters in the YouTube chat or in the Hash Melbourne channel on our Slack. And I'll give you the Slack details a little bit further in. And then I'll be monitoring those two channels. And then if you do have any questions, I will relay them to our presenters so that you can be involved in what's going on. We can't put these events on without the help of our sponsors. They help pay for the catering, obviously, and everything else that we do around here. So it's no small thing to say thank you to our sponsors. Our gold sponsor for this year is Mantle Group. And our silver sponsor for this year is Sevo. And this wonderful venue that we're in today is provided to us by NAB. So big thank you to all three companies for their support for 2024. I mentioned our Slack team. It is quite big. I think we're in the 12 to 1,300 people range. Activity varies day to day, but if it's a great place to ask questions or get involved in the community, if you want to help out, run these events at all, there's a fairly active jobs channel, as well as channels for outages and for news and announcements and stuff like that. The outages one gets particularly busy if the Sydney or Melbourne regions go down, as you could imagine. We're always looking for help and for people to get involved. These events are not just obviously the money from our sponsors helps to pay for the events, but it's the time that our volunteers put in that means these events can happen. So big thank you to our current volunteers. And if you are looking to get involved, there's a couple of different ways we can do that. I don't think we're looking for sponsors at the moment. I think we're closed, or we are?
No, we're still looking for sponsors.
I think we are still looking for one silver sponsor. If anybody is interested, or their companies are interested in that, come and speak to one of us after this. As I mentioned, there's always things to do around here to help set up and clean up and everything else, so always looking for extra hands. But the main thing is speakers. Finding speakers for these sorts of events is the hardest thing that we do. There's 11 of them in a year. 11? Yeah, 11. So that's 22 speakers we need to find, and that's the hardest challenge we've got. So if you do have an idea for a presentation, no matter how big or small, whether you've never presented before or you're a seasoned presenter, come and let us know. We're more than happy to mentor you through the process and give you any feedback, to make you comfortable with speaking in front of people. All right, so we're not the only AWS game in town. There are obviously other community groups as well going on, and other events. So we'd like to highlight a couple of those for you. First one is AWS Reinforce is on again this year, which is the security flavored version of reInvent. It's on in Anaheim, California. If you're lucky enough to talk your company into sending you, I'm not jealous, really. But they do post most things online. Either, I don't know if they just stream it real time or if they just post it afterwards, but it will be available either way. Information at reinforce.awsevents.com, and that's on in just like 5 weeks. June is too close. A little bit closer to home, we've got the AWS Programming and Tools Meetup. Is on in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks? 2 weeks, probably 2 weeks now. Wednesday the 8th of May, they're on, doesn't say where there is, but they are based in here, Melbourne. This is a workshop style one. So if they're doing CDK stacks with GitHub Actions, that'll be a hands-on thing where you can bring your laptop and learn. Details somewhere. Find that one on meetup.com. There is also the AWS Melbourne Well Architected group. I assume that's a group. Coming up, that's the week after, on the Thursday. Again, if you're interested in the Well Architected framework, that's a great one to get along to. There's also the serverless meetup on that same night. I don't know which one of those two you want to go to. I won't play favorites. But yeah, serverless meetup is also a good one. That's on the same one, the Thursday the 16th. This one looks like it's at the Mantle Group office down on Flinders Lane, or Flinders Street. And there's one more, which I've now forgotten the details of.
Yeah, it's like Melbourne Builders After Dark.
So it's only just come through. I think it's a new AWS hosted event, Melbourne Builders After Dark.
Dark, yep.
On the 30th, you said.
Yeah.
So next Tuesday night.
Tuesday night. The cool thing about the next event, that's coming up on the 30th, it's going to be in the AWS Builder Hub, or Builders Space, or whatever they call it. So, so that might be a cool way to go out and check out the Builder Hub. There's only 2 of them in the world, one in New York and the one that they just launched in Melbourne. So look for that on Meetup. Again, I think it was called.
Well, you can also check our Slack. We'll post the details for that after this event once we've narrowed them down. All right, so with that out of the way, I might as well give this back to you. Kick on with the news.
Yep. All right, what's new? The last couple of months, it had been fairly quiet, but this month has actually seen quite a few announcements come through. So Melbourne's sort of got a lot of new services in there. So quite a few of them: the VPC traffic monitoring, Cognito, S3 Access grants, the Glue Studio, a lot of things that actually really flesh out the Melbourne region now. So definitely worth sort of having a look at Melbourne now. We had a couple of things come into Sydney. So the big announcement out of Summit, which I'll touch on, Amazon Bedrock and AWS Deadline Cloud was a new announcement. Basically a render farm that's available in AWS. That's in Sydney as well, so that was a reasonably big one. Right, containers, a couple of things there. So the split cost allocation only came out a couple of days ago. So that's a really handy one for if you're doing a lot with containers and you want to be able to sort of charge back to different groups. So that's really good around that. CloudWatch Container Insights for Windows containers on EKS. So if Matt was here, he would berate anyone that's running Kubernetes and especially anyone that's running Windows on Kubernetes. But if you are, now you've got the option to get the container insights, which is handy. Machine learning. All right, I won't go into any of those, but Bedrock, and a whole bunch of extra Bedrock stuff was announced just like the last couple of days. So all the Bedrock, and including lots of new models and things going GA and stuff like that now. So, but not too many of that in Sydney. I'll touch on that in my preso. Networking. So this dropped just the other day. Amazon Route 53 profiles. So it looked pretty awesome. So if you've got lots of accounts and you're using Route 53 for your DNS, being able to sort of create some profiles and send that out using RAM and all that sort of stuff looks like it might make dealing with Route 53 based DNS a lot easier. 75 cents it looks like it's 75 cents an hour, which equates to about $540 per month to run. So, don't know, maybe a little bit too expensive to be user-friendly and probably out of the realm of anyone just playing around at home. So, yeah, we'll see how that one pans out. Looks interesting, but potentially a bit too expensive. Serverless, a few things out there. So, step functions, giving optimized integration for media convert. So if you're doing a bunch of stuff with media, integration into step functions would be nice. The origin access control for your Lambda function URLs in CloudFront. So that's something that could be quite useful if you're using your Lambda URLs. And AppSync, application request headers to Lambda for custom authorization functions. So again, some useful things coming out in the serverless space. Dev and Ops. So the workflow approvals for Code Catalyst, that's probably nice. I'm not sure how many. Lost the mic. How many people actually use Code Catalyst at the moment? Yeah. So, yeah. Cloud Function change sets offer enhanced visibility. That's nice. More visibility is always good. I'm fine just holding it.
Yeah, no, but you hold it too close is the problem.
Thank you.
All right. So, yeah, so that and cost and billing, billing cost management, data exports. So now you can programmatically set up your cost and billing exports through CloudFormation. So that's always handy. Other cool stuff. This one just came out. Can't remember whether it was today or yesterday, but AppFabric supports 1Password. So anything that helps improve passwords if you're using AppFabric, your password managers, everyone should be using them. I personally use 1Password, which is awesome, but yeah, so that's handy. Workspaces, helping simplify BYO for account management. So that's good. And this one was interesting. So well-architected tool connector for Jira. So if you're using Atlassian Suite or even just Jira, and you perform a well-architected review, your remediation items can now be flicked straight to create a Jira ticket to work on. So yeah, interesting stuff. And that's it for the what's new this week, this month.
It's coming. Yeah, we're starting. Imagine receiving hundreds of emails a day with attachments that you have to process. Each of them has a deadline and can cause potential errors. Now, think of a world where AWS turns this mess into order and receives, processes, and publishes data where it's needed to be. Hi, everyone. My name is Olga. I'm a data engineer for REA Group. I'm also an AWS community builder. That's why I'm here. And I'm one of the hosts for Women in Cloud meetup. As you can imagine, in REA, we have a lot of data. Every time you open a website, you can see hundreds and hundreds of listings. Some of this data is coming from you, our users. Every time when an agent publishes a property for sale, or when you inquire for a property yourself, that's something that is generated by our systems. But we also have other data, which we can produce ourselves. That data is coming from third-party suppliers. It's something like property location. How trivial is that? It could be school zones or any other useful information on the website. And how we receive it, there are different ways. It could be some storage bucket. It could be literally like hard drive, right? So they deliver it to us. But it also could be an email. So today we're going to talk about serverless data pipeline all the way from email to Kafka and how we do it. That's our high-level architecture. So it looks very complex, but let's start from an example. Imagine all of us have a common friend. His name is Jeff. And Jeff's birthday is coming. And our task is to organize his birthday party. Jeff is very sociable. He has a lot of friends, but he's also very organized. He maintains an Excel spreadsheet with all his friends. Name, surname, email, phone number, food preferences, activity preferences, the list goes on. So much can you include. And Jeff sends us an email in here. So email automation service is going to receive that email and break it down. So we break it down by maybe subject or body, whatever text is, and attachment, because we are interested in that attachment. It's going to drop it to S3 bucket and notify our next system called content processor. So that system is going to go to the bucket and find what we are looking for. And we are looking for attachment. Once it's located, maybe Jeff was really concerned about privacy and it's encrypted. Or maybe it has a password. So that content processor is going to decrypt it, or remove the password and do everything possible to get that file into readable format. And once it's possible to read, it's going to drop it to our next system called file ingester. That system doesn't care where the file came from. It's going to take the file, read it, and split it into records. And all those records are going to be sent to Kafka. And from here, a lot can be done. So you can organize bookings. You can book food based on food preferences. You can send messages to all these friends saying, hey, are you coming to the party? Please say yes or no. And that part, a lot can be done. But we don't care about it. We are focused on what is happening between the email being received and messages published to Kafka. Let's start from system number 1, email automation service. Email automation service, as it sounds, starts from simple email service from AWS. You can think of it as an email. It's made of different rules. It's a rule set. And saying that when Jeff sends an email to me at olga@emailyourdomain.com, so he's going to trigger that pipeline, and it's a rule. But imagine if all of us are involved, and we all want to know when email is received, and Jeff could send it to anyone. In such case, we don't have to specify a name. We could use subdomain. We can say that anything received via email@yourdomain.com, whether it's Olga, somebody else, so it will trigger the pipeline. And that's how it works. And once email is received, we can set up different actions. Actions could be maybe send message to SNS, or we can trigger Lambda directly, or we can even save it to S3. But now you might be questioning, if we can save it to S3, why do we need to have all this architecture before S3, right? Might as well just save it to S3. And it could be possible if our emails came as a text, like long time ago when it's text only. But nowadays we want to send many things. We want to send images, we want to send songs, we want to send a lot of stuff, and in our case, we want to send our guest list. That's why the current email format has an extension. It's called Multi-Purpose Internet Mail Extension, MIME, we call it MIME. And it's some sort of binary blob where you can see some sort of sense. You can read where it's coming from, you can see email addresses, you can find it. But for something like image or guest list, you can't find it. You have to do some pre-processing. And that's where Lambda comes from. You can see how this mess is turning into something very readable. So there are a lot of libraries to support it, because that's how all emails come. And you would have to process it anyway. So you can see we extracted attachment, body, header, everything we need. And that's how it works. You receive an email. That email is being stored as original email in S3 bucket. At the same time, we notify SNS. SNS through SQS will trigger our Lambda function with the path to that original email. So Lambda function is going to take that original email, split it to the way we need, and drop it to the same S3 bucket with different prefix. And once it's dropped, Lambda function is going to publish to SNS to notify our next system, passing the path to processed file. Here we go, system number 2, event processor. With event processor, once it's triggered, our Lambda function is going to go to S3 bucket and find that, whatever we're looking for. We are looking for attachment, it will decrypt it, it will process it, and sometimes it's not even attachment we are interested in. Sometimes it's a body with a link to download attachment. That's what we do. And once we extract the file, we are going to drop it to our next system called extracted file bucket. And next system, via S3 notification, is going to trigger Lambda function. So how it works here. Lambda function is going to read the file record by record and publish to Kafka topic. It doesn't have to be Kafka. It could be anything else. Just splitting the records into smaller pieces. You might have noticed that through multiple systems, we have the same pattern. We have SQS and we have Lambda. Why do we do it? We do it to make it more fault tolerant. We do it as a case of buffering. We want to buffer messages. And we also give flexibility to Lambda not to process it from first attempt. Imagine something happened. Maybe throttling, maybe file is too big. Whatever happens, Lambda is trying to process it first time. And it can't do it. So it returns the message back to the queue. It tries to process it second time. And again, it can't process it. It returns it back to the queue. And after 3 retries, if it still doesn't work, it's going to drop that message back, and the message goes to dead letter queue. And it's called dead letter for a reason. So it's the last destination for that message. It cannot be processed. And from here, you can do alerting. You can manually check what happened, and you can fix it from your side. But imagine what happened with the file is that one of our guests say you have a lady called Jessica, doesn't have a phone number. And instead of phone number in that field, she put a text saying that, hey, please come to my house, don't call me, right? And validation failed because it's not a number. We don't want to fail the whole file because of Jessica's number. We want to confirm that Jessica has a wrong number, but the rest of the records could easily go to our next destination. What we do in Lambda function, we are going to record exception to DynamoDB table, but skip the record. So Lambda doesn't fail, and Lambda doesn't return message back to the queue. In such case, we can have a look at the table. Maybe we can call Jessica ourselves, come to her house, invite her. That's an option. And in such case, everyone else will receive messages as expected. One more problem. Imagine if that guy, Jeff, really sociable, has so many friends that Lambda runs out of memory. Just literally can't process it. It's really hard. There are different options. You could maybe switch to AWS Batch. You could ECS, right, EC2. But there is an easier way. You know that you can actually stream objects from S3 bucket with using very little memory. And that's how you make it more efficient and cheaper, even though Lambda is cheap already. And here we go. We covered our 3 systems. Couple of things you probably noticed, that those systems are very reusable. So with first system, we don't really care what email it is. It could be our guest list. It could be some information from venues we are booking. It could be, I don't know, even personal messages. You can track how many guests reply how many times. You can do that with our first system. That's why it's separated. So with second system, if it's similar pattern, in a way it can be used, but I think second is more specific. And the third one is also very reusable. Doesn't matter what file we have, with small tweaks, we could easily process any type of file and publish them to Kafka. Important part about this architecture is the price. It's very cheap. You can see typical prices, your bill per duration and request. An important part that if we receive something on Sunday, then it's going to process it, but often we don't, and we save a lot of money by not running those servers. And that's how we pretty much covered everything. The takeaways from today is reusable components over large single-purpose systems are very important because you don't want to reinvent the wheel every time when you have something with email or every time when you have something with a file being processed. A serverless is very easy and cheap. You pay per what you use, and it's very easy to construct this little code because you notice everything is Lambda function, and it's just connected with SQS for some error handling and triggering. A third one, that SQS and Lambda combination is really amazing because it provides availability and fault tolerance. I didn't mention, but if you create SQS and Lambda in the same region, you don't have to pay for data transfer cost, which is really cheap, again, previous point. And you can stream large files from S3 with little to no memory being used by Lambda. On this note, I want to finish my presentation. Thanks to organizers for giving me this opportunity, and I'm open for questions. Feel free to connect with me.
That was awesome, Olga. Thank you very much. Looks like we've got a question over here already. Let's bring the mic around.
Can you go back to the slide with had the architecture?
The big one?
Yes, please. Between the email automation service and the content processor, why does that first Lambda post a message to the SNS topic instead of just directly to the SQS queue?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So in that particular case, we want to use a fan-out architecture pattern. For example, some other system could plug in as well to read that email, and we could send notifications to stakeholders saying that email was received. So it's very important for like high-value data, which we want to make sure we received. But interestingly, on this note, you can see the other SNS topic. This one is necessary because unfortunately, SES does not provide action to SQS directly. So we have to use SNS here.
Would you have multiple content processors or file ingesters, like for different types of file content? Where would that take place? Or would you just have one Lambda to handle it all?
That's correct. We will have different ones depending on the content, but also sometimes it could be the same content, but you need different parts of it. So sometimes you want to count what is mentioned in the subject, sometimes in the body, and sometimes you process attachment only. So in such case, you would have maybe 3 different content processors.
Thank you.
So how do you deal with different types of file formats? Meme is only one of them. There's
That's a very
multiples
good
of-
question.
Multiples of different types, particularly attachments and all sorts of stuff, from binary to YML. I think that's another nice one. But yeah, I'm assuming a processor would have to be dealt for each one, wouldn't it?
Yes, that's a very good question. So at the moment we are working with DDX. It's also pretty hard. So you have to, it's kind of zipped but also encrypted. But majority of our files would be generic format like JZip, CSV, TXT. Oh, you mean for the email format? Yeah. For the email. I think ours is, that's a good question. So ours is a bit different because we are forwarding from actual email in particular setting like Outlook, which means that we handle the same format over and over. It's forwarded. So we let Outlook handle the conversion. Yeah. Yeah, but that's something we're going to handle once it's direct.
Do you want to talk anymore? Good. Another question in the middle.
Just wanted to know, in this architecture, could you use Kinesis instead of Kafka? And
Yes, you could.
why did you
Yep.
choose Kafka over Kinesis?
So we didn't, in a way, so it could be anything. So
Okay.
for Kafka, we had a Kafka license. We use it within the companies. That's why we chose Kafka. But it
Yeah.
could be Kinesis, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yep.
How is the first notification triggered to the SNS, like from email.yourdomain.com? Is it a SES service?
You mean
which is-
here? It's SNS?
No, before that, like what triggers the notification to SNS, like
The first one is the email. It's SES.
SES?
Yeah,
Okay.
SES.
Yep.
Any question about setting up SES?
Anybody else have any questions? Yep.
Just a practical question for developing this. How did you develop and test the Lambdas? Did you just do it on the server with X-Ray and debug there, or did you do it locally with local stack or
We
something
use
else?
local stack.
Local
Yeah.
stack, right.
Got a lot of questions for this one.
We also use a lot of Mog for unit testing.
If there's no other questions, oh yeah, one down the back. We'll make this one the last one then.
Regarding the file ingester,
Yes.
so we're pretty much doing the same. So I'm working on something that where the file ingester Lambda accesses the file directly from the extracted bucket. I was wondering what happens if we do that without the SQS in between. I think you've talked about the use of SQS, but
Yes,
can you just explain it again?
You can still use it without SQS. So SQS provides buffering in case something happens to Lambda, it's throttled, right? So it gives you this capacity, but you could use Lambda directly. So SQS is just, it's so cheap, it's so useful that we feel like you should use it. You know what I mean? Because you don't pay for data transfer, you pay per request, but it gives you buffering, fault tolerance, and opportunity to set up dead letter queue.
Yeah.
And
What are the examples? Are the common errors where it ends up in dead letter queue?
it could be anything, right? Yeah, it could be something related to the file you're processing. when the file is probably too large. And from first attempt, you know with Lambda how it's reusing context? So first time when Lambda is invoked, it's called start, which means that it might take a bit longer for the very first Lambda, but the second one is faster. So having that queue, you return the message, and then second Lambda picks it up when it's already warm, and it can process it from second attempt. That's kind of example. No worries.
All right, thank you very much, Olga.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, you've got me again. That's either good or bad, but it is what it is. So last week I was off in, went off to AWS Summit in Sydney. I had planned on having this one as a bit of a session with Matt as well, but unfortunately he's off doing dad duties tonight. So this is going to be a bit about my thoughts on Summit. And one of the things that started off was, as an AWS ambassador, we had a chance to go out on the Tuesday night before Summit and have a bit of a get-together of our AWS ambassadors. So for me, that was a really awesome opportunity. A lot of times we'll talk on Slack and so forth, but you know, there's a couple of ambassadors here in Melbourne and we get to catch up and talk, but there's also a whole lot from other states that we don't get to see, so that's really cool. And for this one, they had it at a Brazilian barbecue, so it was just meat. So food was awesome, great company. One of the things, I'm not sure, we'll see if anyone has any really sharp eyes, but, and probably more for the people that are somewhat regular, there's a couple of people that we may, let's see, and right behind the arm we have Matt Gillard there, who came in, he's spoken a couple of times, and especially at our reInvent recap. And the other person just behind the meat with his head looking down is Bojan from Mantle Group, who has also come and spoken here at previous occasions. So, yeah, so that was a really great way to start off Summit, head out, catch up with people, and start the networking. So, and then we were on to day 2 and the keynote. So, a few of the slides there from the keynote. But one of the couple of the key things that I found there. In that first slide, you'll see Raina's there talking about building a better future in Australia and New Zealand. And on that building side, they're going to be sinking an extra 13 billion Australian dollars into here. And they're also going to be doing another 7.5 New Zealand for the new New Zealand region that's going to be coming up in Auckland. This is also where the announcement for Bedrock coming to Sydney was announced. So I mentioned that in the What's New. one of the interesting things, we were having a bit of a chat with a bunch of the other ambassadors and community builders. So, although it was announced that Bedrock is coming to Sydney, it's quite a cut down version of Bedrock. So, not all of the LLMs will be there, and some of the guardrails and so forth. So, if you're going to use it, have a look to see what's available before you sort of jump for joy that it's coming to Sydney. And the interesting thing is, it seems that the LLMs that are not there are all of the graphics intensive ones. So, the chat amongst the other ambassadors and community builders, and when we're just sort of sitting around, it looks like it's probably a shortage for NVIDIA processors, because there's all of those intensive LLMs use all of your graphics chips, your GPUs, and if we can't get them, that throws a bit of a spanner. So it'd be interesting to keep an eye out, see what LLMs are coming into Sydney, and probably, definitely for those online. So I want to point it out. Probably a good time to invest in NVIDIA if you haven't already. So that. There were a couple of other really interesting things. Obviously, in the keynote, there was day one lots about Gen AI. They announced, one of their key keynote speakers was a group called Leonardo.ai, Sydney outfit. So if you're looking at doing a whole bunch of stuff, something that's competing with the likes of, lost it now. What's the other big one for doing graphics and stuff? Midjourney, that's it. Yeah. So if you're looking for to do Midjourney, DALL-E type stuff, and you want to support locals, check out Leonardo.ai. The next one, and this is the image up there. Atlassian came on talking about what they're doing, and they seem to be making relatively heavy use of Q within their suites. So, being able to use the Atlassian products and putting in natural language queries into your searches. They're sort of utilising Q there. And I had to take that pick because, everyone else was sort of talking about Gen AI, Bedrock. We got the traditional AWS undifferentiated heavy lifting on a massive slide. So I thought that was quite rather funny, and snapped that pick. And then we had one of AWS's VPs for compute come in and was talking, promoting Amazon Q and Code Whisperer. So, and then we, as per standard, we had a whole bunch of talks. So that one there, we had Christy Howard, who is one of the developer relations heads and leading up the community builder program, out in her amazing AWS service dress. If you have a look at that, all those little squares on there are all different AWS services, and even her shoes, we're done with that. And that particular talk also, Stephen Sennett, who's a Melbourne boy and speaks here occasionally, he was part of that talk as well. So there were a whole bunch of other cool talks. I only went to really a couple of talks because, like a lot of these things, the talks are all sort of recorded. So you can go now and if you search up Sydney Summit, you can register to download the talk. So all of these you can get and watch back at your leisure. So rather than sort of wasting a whole lot of time going to those type of talks, I sort of did my picking and choosing. Obviously go along and support Stephen and Christy, and then a couple of other ones. And then it was the show floor. So one of the really cool things that I had seen at Summit, and in that sort of top corner there, they've got this like massive Lego set done up, but it's triggered by and controlled by a whole lot of lambdas and serverless applications to do things. So those sort of yellow things that you can see in the bottom corner, they had fans going to sort of spin turbines. They had some little solar panels to do stuff. It was really cool. So they sort of took some of the inputs from that, ran it through some lambdas and some other serverless functions to control different aspects of their Lego city. So, and then, just like you could imagine any other conference, there are all sorts of booths. Probably one of the key things for me, Telstra had just bought recently a company called Versant, used to be one of our sponsors, so it was cool to go up. Versant had a booth there, so I got to meet a whole heap of those guys, from Sydney and Brisbane. Also went down, hung out at the Mantel booth and spoke to a bunch of the people there that we knew. So networking for me is really one of the key things with something like Summit or reInvent, and it's a really great way to go about that. Out of the floor, they had a section for the AWS user groups there, including Melbourne. So it was really cool. At the end of day one, there's a whole, pretty much everyone has all sorts of different parties and things. So started off going off to drinks with Versant. But one of the really interesting things, and being a community builder, they had a special session for community leaders, so community builders, user group leaders, heroes and other things. So that was awesome to go through. We had a bunch of sessions. A lot of it's sort of under NDA, so can't talk a lot about what we discussed there, but sort of a whole bunch of cool things. And just like that whole networking side is really, really an awesome aspect of something like Summit. And then we're on to day two. So the keynote there was a little bit different. Nowhere near as much sort of jumping up and down about AI tools. But there were a couple of sessions, or 3 sessions really, that sort of stood out for me in the keynote. So, and again, these are all available to go and view. So Swimming Australia had a section talking about what they do with AI and ML. Super interesting how they're using data to, check out what their swimmers are doing. But also too, the really interesting part that for me was with their relay teams and the sorts of information that they pull against like the different countries, other swimmers and our swimmers, and then how they will stack up. And saying like it's not always your fastest in each of those individual like events for the medleys, but how they stack up together and what they would do. So some really cool stuff that they were talking about there. And then we had talk with Project Kuiper. So that is AWS's sort of version of Starlink. sort of think like, when they were first sort of talking about it, like, oh yeah, they're throwing all these satellites up in space, and like, well, hasn't Starlink already done that? What's the big deal? But like, there are a couple of cool things that they were talking about that. One of them is with the mesh, the different satellites will also talk to each other via laser. So that's really cool. But for us, you can sort of see in that image there, it will also give you private links to AWS. So you'll connect from your terminal up to the satellite, goes back down to the ground station, and then through the core, you get a private link to AWS from your Kuiper connection. So interesting, and sort of a bit of a differentiator from Starlink there. And then finally, not really a technical one, but they had someone from Westpac that came out and was talking about, so she was an Indigenous woman, talking about some of the issues facing Indigenous communities in remote areas and the sort of access. And so, although there's also the really cool technical aspects of Kuiper, but this is what some of those, the technologies like Kuiper, and probably Starlink as well, really, can do for remote communities where, a lot of the times there's not all that access that they've got. And, she was saying about communities that need to travel like 4 or 5 hours to get to a bank. And if that's closed, they need to go another 7 hours in the other direction to get to the next nearest branch. So, so that was quite interesting as well. So yeah, so that was that day 2 keynote. Day 2 was actually relatively light on in sessions and so forth. But we did have another, again, chance to hang out. So it was there for anyone that knows. There's Matt next to me, and a couple of guys from SIBO. So all of our sponsors, they're in that pic, plus me. So yeah, another day. The one thing that I probably didn't realise was that the day 2 sort of actually finished about 1 p.m. So I'd had another organised for another day in Sydney, but probably could have flown out that afternoon. But it was a really good chance to do further networking. Got to hang out with some ambassadors from community builders from Perth and from Brisbane. So that was my summit experience. Anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Jason. Does anybody have any questions? Well deserved. I've got a question. So, are you going back again next year? Do you think it's worth going? And who do you think might benefit from going?
Yeah, actually, I'll take the second question first. Who might benefit? I think it's a really good event for people that are new to AWS to get and learn things. So while there are, pretty much all of the main sessions are streamed, there's also a lot of workshops as well and sort of hands-on labs. So there's chances to go off there. And also too, if you're dealing with a lot of vendors, it's a chance to sort of get in, talk to the different vendors, find out what's going on with their hardware or their software that's coming out. So all sorts of vendors from sort of like your AV, Red Hat was there, all sorts of different software that runs on AWS. BuildKite was there. There are also too a lot of the consulting agencies, so people going looking for jobs were also had a chance to go and talk to different agencies. So yeah, those are the sorts of things for people to go and see. And if you're, if you're a bit more sort of mature in your AWS usage and the like, it's a really great place to go and network and hang out. So, will I go back? Well, I actually paid for myself to fly out this one. Times are tight, budgets everywhere. So, yeah, like I was happy to go and pay for myself, and I would, pay to go again next year. So.
That's fairly definitive then. I've got a question in the middle.
Did you get time to sit in on any of the sessions or lightning talks, and are there any that stood out?
Yep, yeah, I went to a couple of sessions. So, as you saw on the pics, I went to a session that Christy Howard had, but there were also some sessions around, and a really cool one on what AWS are doing with resiliency on some of their services. So they were talking about the team that does Ring and what they were doing for their resiliency, and Amazon Prime Video as well, and what they are doing for their resiliency. So yeah, there are definitely some interesting talks that are worth going. So yeah, really, and again, like those talks are all videoed and will be streamed later, so you can go on now and have a look at them yourself. So it's sort of a mix of what would I be happy to stream, what do I want to see in person, and then what do I want to see around the floor. Yeah, it's only a couple of days. There's a lot of content, especially day one was the Builders Day, which had most of the sessions. So that's really where you go to sort of watch them. Yeah, so there were definitely some interesting ones, and whatever your focus was, yeah, there were some sessions of interest.
What was the coolest merch?
I didn't bother going for merch this year because there were massive lines for everything. Actually, that was probably leads back to another observation. What I'd been hearing, like post-COVID, was the numbers were quite down. This year, it was really busy. Not quite pre-COVID levels, but damn close. So events are back in a big way.
Cool. Were there any other questions for Jason?
All
Does it
right.
look like it? We'll wrap up.
Thank you.
Leave your laptop plugged in.
Yep, and I'll fire her up.
All right, helps if we hit the play button. All right, so I think, is that actually coming through? It is. All right. So that's us for another night. We've wrapped up a little bit earlier than we normally would, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It means we can go home early. So a big thank you to Olga and to Jason for speaking tonight for us. Thank you very much. So our last agenda item for the night is our marketplace segment. So this is for people who are looking to hire, basically. We don't normally ask you to pop your hand up if you are looking for work. There's a reasonable chance that your boss might be either sitting next to you or watching the recording later on, and that might get you in a bit of hot water. Now this normally either goes for quite a while or it takes no time at all. So I guess, is anybody actually looking to hire people at the moment? Anyone from any companies, anywhere, AWS related, anything else? Might be one of those nights where it's a short one. Cool. Easy peasy. Let's go straight past that. That's it for us tonight. A big thank you to our sponsors, to Mentor Group, to CEVO and to NAB for their support again throughout this year, but also tonight. We will be back again here last Wednesday of the month, same time, same location, the 29th of May, with another couple of great presentations, good food, good company. Thank you very much for coming. We'll see you again next month.